In the twilight years of my existence, when the silver screen had grown dim and the lights of Broadway no longer beckoned, I found solace in the quiet, unassuming corners of American life. It was during this time, dear listener, that I developed a particular fondness for the humble institution known as the all-you-can-eat buffet. Yes, the buffet. A veritable cornucopia of culinary delights where a man could indulge his appetites without judgment or restraint. Or so I thought. My first encounter with such an establishment was in the quaint town of Des Moines, Iowa. The place was called Golden Harvest Buffet, a name that promised abundance and satisfaction. I walked in with a swagger that belied my years, my appetite whetted by the promise of endless bounty. The hostess, a cherubic young woman with a perpetual smile, greeted me warmly and ushered me to a table. Little did she know the storm that was about to descend upon her idyllic haven. I began my feast with modesty, selecting a plate of fresh greens and a smattering of shrimp cocktail. The other patrons eyed me with curiosity, perhaps recognizing the once great thespian in their midst. But soon their curiosity turned to horror as plate after plate made its way to my table. Roast beef, glazed ham, mountains of mashed potatoes, rivers of gravy, all were consumed with a fervor that bordered on the unholy. The manager, a wiry man with a perpetually furrowed brow, approached me as I was savoring my seventh plate. "Mr. Wells," he began, his voice trembling with a mix of awe and trepidation, "we appreciate your patronage, but there are other customers who would like to enjoy the buffet as well." I looked up, my cheeks bulging with food, and fixed him with a gaze that had once commanded legions on the stage. "My good man," I replied, "the concept of an all-you-can-eat buffet is simple. I can eat all I want. Now be gone and bring me more rolls." But my bravado was not enough to dissuade him. With a heavy heart and a heavier belly, I was escorted out, my dignity bruised but my appetite undiminished. This, my dear listener, was but the first of many such encounters. In Cleveland, at a place called Feast and Famine, I was again met with resistance. The proprietor, a portly fellow with a red face and a booming laugh, initially welcomed me with open arms. "Orson Welles," he exclaimed, clapping me on the back, "it is an honor to have you here. Eat, drink, and be merry." And merry I was, devouring everything from the salad bar to the dessert station, with reckless abandon. But as the evening wore on and the buffet tables grew sparse, the laughter faded. "Mr. Wells," the proprietor said, his tone now somber, "we are running out of food." I looked around at the empty chafing dishes and the dismayed faces of the other diners. "Then run to the market and fetch more," I replied, not unkindly. A promise was made, and I intend to see it fulfilled. Alas, my entreaties fell on deaf ears. Once again I was shown the door, my reputation as a gourmand growing even as my access to these establishments dwindled. Perhaps the most distressing episode occurred in a small town in New Jersey, at a place called Endless Eats. I arrived early, eager to avoid the rush and savor the offerings at my leisure. The buffet was a sight to behold, with every conceivable dish laid out in a tantalizing array. I began with a light repast of oysters and caviar, a nod to my more refined tastes, before moving on to heartier fare. As the hours passed, the staff grew increasingly agitated. Whispers of bottomless pit and human vacuum reached my ears, but I paid them no mind. I was in my element, a maestro conducting a symphony of flavors. It was not until the chef himself emerged from the kitchen, his apron stained and his expression one of utter defeat, that I realized the gravity of the situation. "Mr. Wells," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "you have consumed more food than we have prepared for an entire week. We simply cannot continue." There was a plea in his eyes, a silent begging for mercy. For a moment I felt a pang of guilt, but it was quickly overshadowed by my insatiable hunger. "Then you must adapt," I said, not unkindly. "Surely a chef of your caliber can rise to the occasion." But there was no rising, only falling. I was escorted out, not by one, but by 3 burly men, each struggling to contain their dismay. As the door closed behind me, I could hear the collective sigh of relief from the patrons and staff alike. These incidents, dear listener, are but a few of the many that marked my twilight years. Each expulsion was a blow to my pride, but also a testament to my voracious spirit. For in those moments, I was not merely Orson Welles, the actor, the director, the raconteur. I was Orson Welles, the epicure, the gourmand, the indomitable force of nature that no buffet could contain. And so, as I reflect on these misadventures, I do so with a sense of both regret and satisfaction. Regret for the disruption I caused, but satisfaction in knowing that I lived, truly lived, in the pursuit of pleasure and indulgence. For in the end, is that not the essence of life itself? But enough of this maudlin reflection. There is another buffet to conquer, another feast to savor. And though I may be turned away, I shall always return. For the spirit of Orson Welles cannot be tamed, nor his appetite sated.